Greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 44 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I am your host, Rick Verbanis, and as always, I am joined by the best gosh darn co-host out there, Mr. Bob Lucius. Bob. Rick Verbanis asks, are you excited for our Q&A?
Is that the first question of the evening, Rick?
It is.
All right. Well, that's I didn't prepare for that one, so you've caught me off guard. It's going pretty well, actually. I have been really looking forward to tonight's episode because I had opportunity to see some of the questions, but I anticipate some zingers that maybe I wasn't anticipating. Maybe some phone-ins or some emails, or maybe someone will show up at the front door with an Uber will drop them off, or they'll knock on the door with a question. I don't know, but I'm excited about this.
Yeah, this is great. You know, when we thought of this, threw this idea out there a few weeks ago, because I listen to other podcasts that are not comic related. I listen to, things and they had this Q&A show, and I was like, we got to do that, right? I mean, God knows we have a great listener base, but we also have a great, Facebook group, with 4,000 Captain America fans. So you guys responded. You guys threw some great questions out there, and this is gonna be a lot of fun going through this. Now, Bob, you have said this before, but I think it bears repeating. Bob and I are not experts on Captain America. We just really, really like Captain America. Yeah. There are going to be people out there that have so much better knowledge on Captain America. And I have no doubt that on some of these questions, we may get wrong and we may get challenged.
Yeah.
That's why we're going to try to stick to the opinion questions as much as possible, because Bob and I are not shy about expressing our opinions.
Yeah, I'm definitely the guy. If you want to play Stump the Chump, I'm the guy you want to play against. So yeah. So here we are. Definitely, because you're going to win. After the fact, after I've sat and thought about the question, I'll come up with the right answer. But in the moment, I'll say something off the top of my head that undoubtedly somebody will catch me on. So,
are you one of those guys that lays in bed at night and says, when that person said this to me, I should have said this?
Oh yeah. I relive those moments. Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then I'll wake up my wife and I'll replay the conversation with her, and then she'll tell me to shut up and go back to sleep. So
nice. Well, that's the beauty of, so for those who don't know the behind the scenes on what happens here. So Bob and I, we put together our calendar, like a month ahead of time. We try to figure out, who our guests are going to be and what our topics are going to be for the other shows. What stories do we want to cover? And we go through that, and then we go a little back and forth, and we try to be, make it equal. We try to be like, we did a 70s comic. Let's do a 90s comic, or let's do an 80s, or let's do a 2010 or whatever. And so we try to balance it out. And, so we go through that. Then when it comes time for our, let's say we're reviewing an 80s comic, right? We both read it ahead of time, come up with some thoughts, some questions. And then when it comes time, Bob and I will sit here and we chat like we are right now, right? And then Bob's done. Bob moves on.
Yeah, I move on. I forget whatever had just happened. I try to forget about it.
And then Rick relives the conversation over and over again because Rick edits these podcasts.
And there is a lot of editing.
Oh, you have no idea, Bob.
Yeah.
You have no idea the hours that I put in behind the scenes here. Yeah. So I'm going to give you a little sob story. So the last episode we recorded was 42, because we recorded our interview with John Beatty a little earlier. That was last week. If you haven't listened to the 43 with John Beatty, go listen to it. Great great conversation with a longtime legendary inker of Captain America. But anyway, so we recorded before the last one we recorded was 42, which was the Captain America 265, 266. And Bob and I had way too much fun in that episode. There was a lot of side tangents, a lot of this makes me think of this. And so it was a 2-hour podcast when I got a hold of it. Now I trimmed it down to an hour and 46 minutes for 2 issues. That's ridiculous. But anyway, I hope you guys had as much fun listening to it as we did recording it. But I have to tell you, Bob, so to edit a 2-hour podcast takes 3 hours.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I have to go through it again and whatever. So now here's the thing. Now Anchor is the our host for the podcast, and they have this particular, let's just say, issue that I have experienced from time to time, and that is when I go in and I edit something, I make cuts, right? And it's, and there's a lot. Let's just if you can visualize a rope, okay, right? And the rope has an ending and has a beginning and an ending, right? And so along the way, I'll make some cuts and take stuff out where inevitably I say something stupid, or I fumble on a word or whatever, and so then that just makes the rope shorter, okay, right? Because they just magically connect and it makes it shorter. Now, the issue that comes up sometimes is that when I go to save, all the cuts on that rope are now in different order. Ooh. So the 3 hours of editing I did is now, it's like I have a choice. I can start over and do the entire thing from scratch again on my Sunday afternoon, or I can go in and re-listen to things and then cut where they're supposed to go and then somehow figure out to put them back together in order, which takes about half the time. So my editing of that podcast took me 4.5 hours.
That's not something it seems like something you don't want to do if you are even slightly intoxicated.
Dear Lord. So I hope everybody out there enjoyed that podcast, because we did. We had a lot of laughs. We had a lot of fun. And it was, listen, I didn't mind listening to it a second, a third, a fourth time. But anyway, then what do I do after that? Well, I then have to save it and schedule it, and it goes out through all our different platforms. I then create the posts on our Facebook group. We also are on Twitter and on Instagram, but we don't have any followers. But I then do those, and then I then post those, and then I take those and I go onto various Facebook groups, and I'm like, hey, you should listen to this podcast, right? And I post them there. So then several more hours gets involved with promoting the podcast. Yeah. All the while, dear listeners, Bob's moved on.
Blissfully unaware, I think is the phrase you're searching for.
Yeah.
Or Rick, he's out in front of the grocery store with one of those sandwich boards, shilling the podcast, and I'm laying by the pool, sipping margarita. So.
All right. So anyway, that's the little behind the scenes how they make the sausage. But and by the way, we picked up, Bob, a fifth patron of the series.
Hot dog.
I do. I want shout out to our good buddy Seth Talley.
Seth, all right.
Seth is a member of our Facebook group, and by the way, Seth is also a former employee of mine when I had my comic book store. He worked at my comic book store.
You're kidding me.
I'm not.
Wow.
And Seth became a very good friend.
And he still associates with you.
I know.
That's a good sign.
Well, I don't know if all my employees would probably say that. I ran a tight ship, but Seth became a very good friend, and so we appreciate your support, Seth. So now we're up to 5 patrons, which helps with the costs. And Bob, let me tell you, I'm not ready to announce yet.
No. Okay.
Not ready to announce yet,
Yeah.
but we've got a super cool premium that we are going to give away to uh, patrons, people who support, and this is going to be something that you guys are going to be like, wow.
Yeah.
Now it's mega bucks. It's going to cost a lot of money, but we figure it's worth doing, and you guys will love. So anyway,
Mhm.
if you want to pitch in a few bucks a month, you can go to our Anchor page. The link is in any of our podcast notes or on our Facebook. Right, you can go in and support us. There's going to be a bunch of stuff that we're going to start giving away to our patrons as a show of sign of a thank you.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. And
more
yeah.
details to come.
Yeah. You don't want to be, you want to be the first one on your block to be showing off these premiums. So
Exactly. All right, Bob. So we should probably just get into the Q&A.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
We've never done this before, so I really don't know how we're going to do this, but how about this? I'll ask a question from one of our listeners, and then you can ask me a question.
Okay.
And we'll go back and forth.
Mm.
All right. So
are we under oath or should we, is there something we have to do to prepare for this? No, I guess we just go, right?
We're just going to go. We're
Okay.
going to go. And,
right.
and also, hey, everybody, remember, we're not experts. Okay.
We're
Bob.
Opinionated amateurs.
Very opinionated
All
amateurs.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Bob. I think this one's perfect for you.
All right.
Now, for our listeners who aren't aware, Bob has a very distinguished military career where he spent 25 years in the Marines. So, Bob, I think this is a great question for you. And this comes from one of our Facebook members, Frank Delgado. He asks, did Steve get the rank of captain automatically just because of the super soldier program?
Wow. It's not the first time I've heard that question, Rick. I know this gets raised every now and again in the Captain America comic book fans Facebook group, right? And so I've had the occasion to think about this before, and it's not an easy. Well, I guess it is an easy question to answer, and I guess the short answer for me would be I don't think so, and let me tell you why. All right, so a lot of people don't know this, but or maybe they just sort of know the broad picture, right? But there's the enlisted ranks and then there's the officer ranks, and they serve two different purposes, right? So the enlisted ranks are mostly technical. They're the folks that actually know how to get stuff done. And then there's the officer ranks, right? And the officer ranks are, they're supposed to be leading and managing and sort of directing and strategizing and that sort of thing. But the sort of how you get to be an officer or how you become an enlisted are really completely different. So we know that Steve Rogers, right, was enlisted as a private, entered the Project Rebirth, and shortly thereafter was promoted to private first class. If you go back to, I think it was Captain America 215, he's depicted as a private first class. How he got the moniker Captain America has, been portrayed differently in different times, different origin stories. But,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
For those of us who don't know, at what level are you considered an officer?
Well, that's a good question, Rick, right? So the officer ranks go from an O1, which would be a second lieutenant in the Air Force or the Army or the Marines, or an ensign in the Navy, right? That's sort of the entry level rank. So all the E ranks, E1 up through sergeant major, fall in the enlisted ranks. And of course, there's the staff non-commissioned officer ranks, which is sort of the bridge between the enlisted force and the officer force. But generally, to become an officer has some basic qualifications. And one of them is advanced education, right? So you have to have a degree, and you have to either go through one of the service academies or an ROTC program, or perhaps you've had a degree and then you can get a direct commission from the enlisted ranks into the officer ranks. But the one sort of other category is this concept of a battlefield commission. And this is where, potentially, right? Steve Rogers, maybe they gave him a battlefield commission because it was during World War II. There was another famous soldier in American history that received a battlefield promotion. He was a staff sergeant and got promoted to second lieutenant on the battlefield. A guy by the name of Audie Murphy. You might have heard of him. The most decorated soldier in American history. He also became a movie star and filmed in a movie version of his life experience. It's called The Hell and Back. Fabulous movie, right?
Oh, yeah,
so
okay.
he received a battlefield commission. But the question is, what about Steve Rogers? Nowhere, with one exception in the comics, is it clear to me that he actually ever was given a commission. That is a direct appointment by the President of the United States to care. Now, he signed a contract that he was going to be, he's going to get the uniform, he was going to use the shield, he was going to be a symbol of America serving at the discretion of the president until otherwise directed that he wasn't needed anymore. So he did sign a contract. So potentially he could have gotten a commission. But I don't think so. And there's no really evidence that I've found that at any point, except when he took off the uniform and he became Captain Stephen Rogers. And you're probably familiar with that. I think it was in Dark Avengers and in the Steve Rogers Super Soldier miniseries. He was Captain Stephen Rogers, not Captain America, because he had taken off the uniform and Bucky was wearing it at that point.
I thought he was Commander Rogers.
You would think that, but in fact, they referred to him as Captain Rogers. In the MCU, we hear Commander Rogers, and they may very well at some other point in his service with S.H.I.E.L.D. use that term. I can't remember off the top of my head. So I guess it comes back to what function did Cap serve? Was he in a command position, or was he a mascot of some sort? Now, there is plenty of history of folks, not folks, people who given honorary promotions, like Senator Bob Dole. He got an honorary promotion to colonel. But we have mascots in the military. We have dogs and horses that are giving honorary promotions to officer rank and CO rank as well. Yeah, of course. The mascot of the Marine Corps is a bulldog. And so going all the way back to the 1930s with Sergeant Major Jiggs, and currently with Sergeant Chesty, they have an honorary rank. So I think, quite honestly, that he never actually received a commission. And we can't tell from his back pay, right? Because there's not enough details there to tell us exactly what went into that back pay when that was written into the Cap story. But there was one exception. I mentioned that earlier. Do you know what that one exception was?
What is that, Bob?
Where he was explicitly given the rank of captain. That was in volume 1 of What If, number 44, I believe.
Hey, we're in episode 44. How about that?
All right. So what if Captain America led an army of super soldiers? And those super soldiers were the Howling Commandos that were all given the super soldier serum. It was a two-part series of What If back to back. It's a great story. But in that, he was actually given a commission as a captain and made the commander of this battalion of super soldiers. And that, my friends, is the only evidence I could find that Cap was ever given the official rank. I think he remained a PFC until his disappearance.
That, I got to say, Bob, was pretty impressive. And you were 100% the right person to ask that question, because I got to tell you, Frank, I would have said, yeah, probably. That would have been
and you may well be right.
that would have been my answer.
That's a great question, though, right? Because we hear this all the time, but we don't know. I don't. There may be some evidence in a comic somewhere that this was explicitly called out. But if someone knows, let us know, because I want to know what that answer is.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Let's see, Rick. What do I got for you? Well, let's start with something. Let's start with something easy for you. All right. So tell me, what's your favorite piece of Cap trivia? This is from Grant Baugh.
Oh, Grant's one of our 5 patrons. Thanks for the question, Grant. Favorite piece of Cap trivia? Well, I don't know. I would say, I think, which is more commonplace now, that people know this, and especially because of social media and because we just, recently celebrated Independence Day, that Steve Rogers' birthday is July 4th, Independence Day. And I don't think I knew that until a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I figured it out, like where I read it or whatever. Like, I don't know, but I've been reading Captain America comic books since the 80s, early 80s, so, and it took me until a few years ago to figure that out. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it isn't such a well-known piece of trivia, but that's got to be up there.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that maybe that's in Bicentennial Battles? Maybe that's in the Treasury Edition. I can't remember where I read that either. But you're right. That's not well known. But yeah, it's an interesting piece of trivia. Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got to correct myself, Rick. It was What If 28, volume 1.
Well, then
not 44.
That
so
there's totally no synergy there because that was a totally different episode.
Yeah. Sorry, fates.
Okay. All right, Bob. You know what? Hey, we got someone called in. We have a listener who called in and left a question.
Was it the right number?
Let's take a look.
Hey, Rick and Bob. I was just wondering, if you could write Cap, what would your run be like? Thank you. Bye.
Woo!
All right, Bob, if you could write Cap, what would your run be like? And that was from also another one of our patrons, Joshua Van Dyne. So thank you, Josh, for your support of the series. Great question, Bob.
It is. And Joshua,
here's why it's a great question, because I don't know about you, but there's been plenty of times, especially in the last few weeks, where I have seen questions come up about, oh, well, the current series is ending. What's the next volume going to be like for Captain America? And I've seen plenty of people say, Rick and Bob should totally write the next series, which, that's flattering. And thank you very much. We appreciate that.
I can barely write a check. Yeah.
So, Bob, if you could write Cap, what would your run be like?
Yeah, it would be late. I can tell you that. Because if there's one thing I've learned from, it'd be late and it'd be short. Because if there's anything I've learned from all the interviews we've done with creators, is the one thing that will doom your career at Marvel is not getting your work in on time. And I'm a procrastinator and I'm a perfectionist, and I could see myself laboring over storylines into the wee hours of the morning and missing deadlines. And so I think it'd be a very, very short run for me. But I got to tell you, Rick, we've had this discussion before, and I'm a big idea person, right? And what I mean by that is I enjoy action, I enjoy fights, I enjoy all that sort of stuff. But what I really get off on is the deep thinking stories, right? And so for me, if I were going to write a run of Cap, it would definitely, the whole theme of the entire run and the various arcs within that run would have to be following some theme that gets you to think and wrestle with complex issues. And I know that's not always popular, but that's just the sort of thing that I really enjoy. And so I don't know what that would look like, but I know that that's where I would want to go.
Excellent. I like that. I'd read that, Bob.
Well, thank you, Rick. I'm going to get to work on it. I'm going to get to work on it right away. Okay. So how about you? What about you, man?
Well, I think I would do the same thing as you as far as have a general theme that, encompasses the whole thing. But I would probably, and again, I'm like you, hey, you got to have your action, you got to have your big events, things like that. But when people, not that people ask me this, but if people were to ask me, hey, Rick, who's your favorite fictional character of all time? My answer is, of all time, Steve Rogers. And not Captain America, it's Steve Rogers.
Right.
So I would want to have my story be something that shows Steve Rogers as the person. I go back to some of the stories that I really enjoyed reading, and they were stories that involved Steve building relationships with his neighbors and building relationships with his friends and having a love interest and something outside of just the next adventure, or not outside, but in addition to, right?
Right,
I
right.
would want to see that side of Steve. um I I'd want to see Steve have fun, you know. I know one of the pieces of art that I have, a commission that I have that you really liked, Bob,
Yeah, yeah. I know where you're
was the
going.
one with that was done by Phil Noto,
Yeah,
who's a superb artist, and he's never really done Captain America, and I tend to stick with Captain America commissions by Captain America artists, but I really like Phil Noto, and I saw something that he had done about uh, it was almost like black and white photographs of the 60s and 70s, and I saw this one particular image of Cap speaking, and he's out of focus, but Sharon Carter is there sitting next to him on the couch, and she's just mesmerized by him, and you could see the respect and the love that she has for him. And I said, I want something like that. And so he drew this. I asked for a Cap Steve and Sharon coming back from a mission. So they're both in uniform, but Steve's got his mask off, and he's walking, and he's got his arm around Sharon, and Sharon's looking up at him, and just with that same look of respect and love, and Steve has a big smile on his face, and you really like that piece of art,
yeah,
and that's the kind of moments that I want to have in my story. That's the kind of um, you know, and trust me, there definitely would be some soapboxes, right? There would
yeah,
definitely be some times where Steve would give a monologue.
yeah,
That's a given. I would totally have that in my story, but I'd have those tender moments as well, because it's the man behind the mask. It's the man that without the super soldier serum that I respect and I love reading about.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's nicely put. Nicely put. Yeah, the humanizing aspect of Steve really adds a level of complexity, and I think that makes for great storytelling.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that note, since you're talking about original art, Rick, tell me this is from Ralph Werner. Um,
Oh, Ralph.
yeah, Ralph's a big contributor to the
Ralph
group
gave a
as
ton
well.
of questions. We're going to
He
get to
did.
several of his.
Yeah, he sure did. Hey, so what's your Grail Cap original art piece?
Okay. So for original art, right? This generally refers to something that an artist had done that there's only one of them right out there, right? It's original. It's a one of a
Yeah,
kind. It most of the time it refers to something that's published, so it could be a page from a comic or a cover or something like that. But it also can include a commission, right?
yeah.
So I would go. Now I've been very fortunate. I started collecting original art when I finished my Cap run, right? I got Cap 100 to current. I got Tales of Suspense 58 through 99, and I had a choice, Bob. I could go Golden Age because I don't have any issues of Golden Age. They're very expensive. Or I could go original art, which is also very expensive. And I decided to go original art because I wanted to get pieces of comics that I loved, right? And so I've been very fortunate. I have, half a dozen. I don't have a huge collection by any means, but I have a half a dozen pages or so. I don't own a cover, other than a Mike Zeck fanzine, which is one of my favorite pieces that I got earlier this year. So I would love to get a cover,
Yeah.
and and if I could pick any cover of Captain America, it's a toss up. Both are by Mike Zeck.
All
Okay.
right.
Um, 286,
286.
which is the infamous Deathlock cover where
Oh, yeah.
Deathlock's got his gun up and he's got Cap in his scopes.
I see
right?
that right behind you, actually.
Yeah. Well,
Print of that.
yeah. And then and that has sentimental value to me because that's the first Cap comic that I bought, that I picked up, that I got on a regular basis. And I haven't stopped since. So 286 is when I started my run. And again, I've never stopped. So that has sentimental value, but I also really, really love 275. 275 is the, we did a podcast episode on that. It's got Baron Zemo in it, but it's a yellow background where Cap's holding his shield up and he's getting fired on and he's looking up as bullets are coming down on him. And he's kind of got this, battle face looking. That's just a stunning cover. So if I could have either of those, and let me tell you, we're talking mega bucks, right? Like I couldn't afford those if I wanted to, but those would be my grail. And look, I want to do a shout out to artist Mike Perkins. Mike, I don't know if you're listening, but Mike has been a guest on the show. Mike is also a contributor in our Facebook group, but Mike had a nice little run on during the Ed Brubaker comics as a penciler and an inker.
Sure did, yeah.
And then he also was a penciler for a 2-year run on Deathlock series, and so he went ahead and recreated the cover to 286. So I got that. So I have a recreation of 286 by Mike Perkins. Which is the closest thing I'm probably ever going to get to the real thing.
Well, Rick, don't say that, because I wrote 286 and 275 down, and I didn't want to share this on the podcast, but I got some good news for you, because I got some emails recently from some relatives I didn't know I had in Nigeria, and it looks like I'm going to be coming into quite a bit of money, and so I'm going to hook you up, brother. So,
oh wow! It's just I knew it. It's an Oprah Winfrey moment.
It is. Look under your seat, man. So just stand by. It's going to take a while for this to unfold, I think, but I think some good things are going to be happening.
Awesome. All right, Bob. You know what? We're going to stick with Ralph Warner.
All right.
Because he's got some great questions. Okay.
Yes, he does.
All right. We'll start with some of the non-Cap ones. Tiger Beat wants to know, who's dreamier, Rick or Bob?
It's like, do you like vanilla? Do you like strawberry? Do you like chocolate? I mean, right? Different strokes for different folks, people. Come on.
Yeah. Do you like tall, dark, and handsome, or short, bald guy? All right. He also asks, Ginger or Marianne?
Oh, I'm definitely a Marianne sort of guy.
Me too. Yeah. I think most of us are.
Yeah. But the reality is, let's face it, right? Beggars can't be choosers. So
hey, listen, yeah, if you're on an island, Mrs. Howe's looking good.
That's right. Yes, indeed, Lovey.
All right. So here's a Captain America one from Ralph Warner. All right, Thunderdome.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm thinking our listeners will know, because they're of a certain age. They know the Thunderdome, right? Mm-hmm. Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome.
Oh yeah.
That was the third movie, right? Of Road Warrior, right?
Yeah.
So so the Thunderdome is basically, well, Tina Turner would know best, but hey, 2 in, 1 leaves.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
That's it.
And so he wrote Thunderdome, the Tumbler versus Doughboy. 1 leaves, 1 does not. Who makes it?
Yeah, that's an easy one, Rick. Where. First of all, I need to point out that I brought up Thunderdome in my class at the university a couple weeks ago. I asked these science fiction movie trivia questions, and I give prizes, man. I give actual prizes. And nobody had even heard of Thunderdome.
Oh my God.
I know.
But they're all what? they're all like
well,
19, 20, 18.
They're 20, 21, right? Yeah. So it's just ridiculous, But in any case, the question at hand, Tumbler. Now I'm assuming he's talking about the original Tumbler, right? I'm assuming he's talking about.
Does it make a difference?
John Robert Keane, right? The original bad guy Tumbler, because his younger brother, I think it was it Michael Keane. He was really a good guy at heart. He was just trying to correct a wrong. He ended up actually working with Cap to undo a wrong that had been perpetrated against his family. But the original Tumbler, I mean, he couldn't hold a candle to Doughboy. I mean, for criminy's sakes, Doughboy stood up against what? Cap, how many times? He stood up against Thor. He fought the Thunderbolts. He even went up against Brock Rumlow, right? And he came out each time. He may have come out in pieces, but he found a way to pull it back together again and soldier on. And God, he even made it to Dimension Z for crying out loud. So Doughboy, I think, wins every time. I definitely now. I'm passionate. I'm a passionate Doughboy supporter. I love dough. I like all sorts of bread. And so, maybe I'm blinded by his personality and charm, but I got to be in Doughboy's corner.
Well, that was a given. I think Ralph was kissing up because he knows how much you love Doughboy, and I think he just had to find a way to throw it in. Personally, I'm going to go with the Tumbler. Well, come on, Bob. He's going to tumble away.
He tumbles for you, man.
That's what he does. He tumbles away.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if Tom is listening, Tom Brevoort's listening, I want a Doughboy miniseries. That's it. If I'm not, go bold or go home.
You and Primus. All right. So, all right. There you go. Now it's your turn to ask me something.
All right. Let me, let's see. Let me think to myself, put on my thinking cap.
Oh, I get it. Cap. That's funny.
All right. Here's one from a long-term member of the group and fellow moderator, a guy who does a lot of work helping keep things on the straight and narrow in the group. Good old Heath Brown, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we love Heath.
We love Heath.
Yeah. Now Heath's one of our moderators, and you're right. We got to give him and Daniel a shout out because, guys, we get. I don't know. I can't remember the statistics. We approve. I don't know, 500 posts a month.
Yeah,
and like 4,000 comments. I mean, guys, this is.
Some of you don't make it easy.
Some of you don't make it easy. Most of you do, and we love you.
Indeed. So from Heath wants to know, and this is a great question, right? Because I think we all think about this, but if you could give Cap one superpower, what would it be and why?
Heath, that's a great question, and I don't like it. And I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, I'm going to do a cop out here, Bob, because he said if you could give Cap any one superpower.
Loophole. There's a loophole.
And I'm going to say, and listen, if he held my feet to the fire and he said, you have to give Cap a superpower, what would it be? But he didn't. So he said, if you could give Cap a superpower, what would it be? And I'm going to go with nothing, because that's one of the things I love about Cap. Now, okay, sure. You could argue he has the super soldier serum, which gives him, advanced ability, agility, speed, strength, endurance. True. Peak human condition is what they say, right? So he's not like somebody who can, lift 5,000 pounds. But I don't know. For me, I've always been attracted to characters that I can relate to better. So my favorite Marvel characters, I mean, obviously Cap's number one. And then a distant second is Daredevil. Of course, you could argue, well, he has radar sense, but still, he's not like Thor or Hulk or Superman, right? And then for DC. It's been Batman. It's been Dick Grayson. So I like the more relatable characters.
Mhm.
So to give Cap a superpower would make him less relatable to me. And so I'm going to cop out here. I'm going to say, you said if you could give Cap anyone's superpower, and I'm going to say I'm not going to give him one.
Wow. Well, you're right. That is a cop out, but I think it's well reasoned. It was a great rationale. I was going to say like scream with the power of the Liberty Bell, but I think now in retrospect, I like yours much better. So I think that was well argued.
All right. Oh, we got another call in, Bob. We got another call in. This one is from Ash. Ash has been you know what, for those who may not recall, Ash has been a guest on the podcast. She was part of when we were doing those Falcon and Winter Soldier reactions. She was on episode 1 of that, where she came in as a guest and reacted. So Ash called in and she has this question.
Hey y'all, it's Ash. My question is, if y'all could pitch a Cap comic to Marvel, what kind of story would you write and what characters would you include in it? And have either of you ever thought about doing this or actually written a Cap comic? Let us know.
Okay, so great question, Ash. It's multi-segment there. So Joshua Van Dyne had already asked if you could write a Cap, what would your run be like? So we kind of touched on that portion of your question. But she asked who would be in it, and also have either of you ever pitched or written a Cap comic before? So Bob, who would be in your Cap series?
Gosh, I hate to cop out, man, but I am just like a big fan of the hate monger. And I know he's been dispensed with on a number of occasions, but I'm always down to see the hate monger come back. The question is, now, have I ever pitched one? No. But if I did pitch one, it would involve the hate monger for sure. And I got to tell you, I would make it timely. You want to hear what my pitch would be, Rick?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. I would pitch
Tom Brevoort, if you're listening.
Yep. Here it goes.
We have this recorded, so you can't steal this idea.
This is heads exploding all over the place as soon as this hits a disputed election with an unpopular president and division in the streets, and Cap needs to figure out who's pulling the strings behind the scenes because somebody is making this happen. And you know who it is? It's the hate monger. Ripped from the headlines, but there's somebody, again, pulling the strings behind the scene, and it's hate monger. And I bet he's being abetted by Machine Smith.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When it comes to the hate monger, is this the Adolf Hitler hate monger, or is this the hate monger? What's the 50s Cap name again?
Oh no, it's not the Grand Dictator William Burnside, right?
Yeah, but wasn't William Burnside hate monger at one point?
I don't believe he was, but there was this interesting. I can't remember what issue it was. You may remember it, but there was a particular issue where Steve and Sharon were sort of peeking in on a clone of Adolf Hitler who didn't know that he was Adolf Hitler, right? And so I think that would be a nice launching off point for somebody that is behind the scenes manipulating media, manipulating social media, manipulating the scenes to sow division by tearing the American people apart. And Steve has to come in and try to knit things back together again, while at the same time figuring out who's working behind the scenes to make this happen.
Interesting, Bob.
It's a tough needle to thread. I'm
going to tell you right now, I'm not ready for that story. I think after the Coates, yes, too soon. After the Coates story, I think I want to get back into something fun.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah, I want to get back into
road
something
trip.
Fun. Yeah. Exactly. Hey, Mark Wade, come on back.
Maybe the road trip, maybe the the United States of Captain America, maybe they were onto something with another road trip, right? Maybe we needed that.
I don't know. I want something fun.
Not
So,
roady enough for you. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, Bob, but back in high school, my dream was to be a comic book writer.
Really?
It was, and I worked with a friend who was an artist to try to develop some comic books to pitch, and I did the quasi Marvel style because I'm a closet artist, so I like to sketch things. So I didn't write the scripts. I actually laid out the comics, with rough drafts and put the word balloons in and everything. So with the idea that my friend who was an artist was going to take these and make them look good. And I had a couple of different series that I came up with.
Wow.
And I pitched a couple and I got some nice form letter rejections.
I hope you framed those. You still have those?
No, I don't think so.
That's a shame.
Yeah, and we're talking like comic publishers like Eclipse.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like people were like that. We're like, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah.
So and of course they were very superhero-y, because that was what I was into at the time.
Yeah.
And I had this pitch that I've been wanting to do. It's a Daredevil Wolverine story that I've been wanting to pitch to Marvel for a while now, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I've been too busy, but it's something for like, I don't know, the last 10 years that I just thought made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Who knows? Maybe one
I gotta
day.
tell you, yeah, that sounds good. And I'm more of a producer. I'm more of a consumer than a producer, but I envy people like you that can sort of percolate those ideas, particularly over a long period of time. You got to do that, man. Get it in.
One of these days. I don't know if you heard me in the beginning of this podcast, but I've been a little busy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Point scored. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Eric Corpy, Bob, asked the question. Eric wants to know, what is the airspeed velocity of a swallow?
But now, are we talking a laden or an unladen swallow? I'm not sure. So there's not enough information for me to answer that question. Right?
African or European?
African or European? There's so much going on here that
I don't know that.
It seems like a trick question.
Yes. No, that's a great question. Thank you. And we appreciate all the Monty Python fans out there that get that. What a classic movie. It's probably, that may be one of the movies I've seen more than any other movie.
Yeah.
Is the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, and I constantly quote The Life of Brian to my son, but
well, hopefully he hasn't seen it yet.
He has not seen it. No, he has not. No,
I know. I've let my son see it because he's old enough, but my daughter, I'm like, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait. Yeah. All right. So he also asked another question. Eric asks, do you think Sin, who is Cynthia Schmidt, do you think Sin will get her superpowers back?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I'm assuming he's not talking here about the Hammer of Skandi, right? Which was the Fear Itself storyline where she got the hammer, she became Skandi, the Frost Giantress, the goddess of the winter wind or some stuff like that. But she got that hammer taken away from her by Cap wielding Mjolnir. And put a damper in that. So I assume he's talking about going way, way, way back in the time machine to the Captain America 295 to 300 area with the Sisters of Sin and Mother Superior. And that was interesting storyline. She had some crazy powers there, right? She could phase through walls. She could use this psychic power to sort of hypnotize people and throw them off balance. She could do some crazy stuff. As
Levitate.
could levitate. As could the other sisters.
Mm-hmm.
What were they? They were like agony and pleasure. Was it death and what was the other one? I can't remember. Smelly, yeah, sleepy, and I don't know what the other ones were, but yeah. So anyway, there were the Sisters of Sin, right? And then of course she. I'm not. It never seemed to me quite clear how she got those powers. I know Red Skull was like messing with some Zola technology, the same Zola technology that transferred his consciousness, and I guess he tweaked it a little bit, and somehow, in the aging of Sin, of Schmidt, Cynthia, and the other sisters, somehow they got these powers. Perhaps, I don't know. Never quite to my satisfaction explained. There may be somebody out there that could clue me in on some other comics where that was sort of filled in. I don't know.
I don't think other comics filled it in.
I don't think so either. Yeah. But of course, she was returned to her previous age later on in that volume 1. And then we see, Cynthia pop up here and there. And then in the most recent volume, right toward the end, it was issue 20.
Let's not give anything away.
Oh,
spoiler
sorry.
alert.
I don't.
Right? We don't want to.
Well, okay, fair enough. But I don't know.
All right, how about this? For anyone who has not read the end of volume 9, the Coates series, which ended with issue 30. If you have not read that and you don't want a spoiler, skip ahead 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So very quickly, it appears that she is manifesting those powers again, and they might even be stronger. So we may see a Mother Superior, or at least Superior.
Yes, just Superior.
Back in action.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's a no-brainer. I think she's coming back.
Yeah, I think it was a nice softball lobbed by Coates. He was like, you know what? I'm ending the series. Next writer, here you go. You could do with what you will.
Yeah.
I would you know what? I would be disappointed if some writer doesn't pick up on that and just lays that dangling.
Yeah, I think, the thing with Cynthia is Brubaker's run, used her very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
The Fear Itself storyline used her effectively. And in the most current run, I think, used her in a very interesting way as well. She's an interesting character. She makes me uncomfortable.
Well, she did make our top 10 list, Bob.
Yeah, right?
She barely made our top 10 list, but... So for those who haven't listened to podcast episode number 9, I still regret the fact that we didn't do our top 10 list on episode 10. The marketing guy, is like, what were you thinking? It's episode 9. We're going to do top 10. Come on. Anyway, we did top 10 villains not named Red Skull because we all know Red Skull would be number 1. Right. But Cynthia Schmidt made our top 10 villains. So
yeah,
maybe
she's fascinating, right, Rick?
Yeah,
she's crazy as a loon.
Well, wouldn't you be if you were
probably so.
A product of Johann Schmidt?
I think it was 295, issue 295. It had her little origin backstory.
Yeah,
she's been through some stuff, man. And then how Crossbones sort of deprogrammed her and the Brubaker.
Yeah.
She's messed up.
You know what? I'm going to just put
I've
this
dated
out.
girls like her.
I'd
probably date. If I wasn't married, I'd date her.
Oh, you like a little crazy, do you?
I like a little crazy.
Yeah, really? You know what? I had enough crazy. Are you
done with that?
I'm totally done with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to put this out there. Crossbones? Yeah. He's a jerk.
Yeah, he is a jerk. Yeah.
He's not a nice guy.
She's not into that. She's not looking for that. She's not looking for that. Yeah. They go together. Like
you can ask me a question or what, Bob?
I am. I'm sorry. I just like talking about sin. What can I say? All right. So here, let me ask you this one. This is from Miguel Sanchez, and he wants to know, what's your dream team of writer, artist, inker, colorist for the Captain America title?
Oh, Bob, that's a layup.
I
I
know
mean,
it
that
is a
that
layup
is
for
so
you.
easy. Listen, I don't expect everybody to have listened to the very first podcast we did, which was number one. Rick and Bob discuss what got them into Cap, but I laid it out right then and there. My dream team, as we refer to it, is the one I was introduced to Cap on, right? And I think that goes for all of us, right? I think all of us have a sweet spot for what we were reading when we fell in love with the character.
Yeah.
Not introduced, fell in love with the character, right? And lucky for me, I fell in love with the character right away. And at the time, it was 1983. So the team on the book was J.M. DeMatteis, who was the writer. Uh, Mike Zeck was the penciler. John Beatty was the inker. And Bob Sharon was the colorist. And they were together for at least 2 years, if not more. And I go back and I look at those stories, and we had the pleasure
Yeah.
and a thrill for me to interview J.M. DeMatteis back on episode 13, and because he had been on the book for about 3 years, and he was gracious enough to talk about all of that run, all of those stories, and then we had the pleasure of talking with like last episode, John Beatty, the inker, to take us through that. And then back in episode 7, we talked to Bob Sharon, the colorist. So, we've talked with most of these people, but I go back to those stories, and I think that's why my favorite character is Steve Rogers,
Mhm.
because what I loved about DeMatteis's writing was he had, don't get me wrong, he had some great plots and some great interwoven stories. He gave us the return of Baron Zemo.
Yeah.
He gave us, for that matter, the return of Arnim Zola and Doughboy and Primus.
You're right.
But he gave us the Deathlock story, right? Which was one of the first ones that we covered back in episode 4. He gave us, like you mentioned, Cynthia Schmidt, right? And turning her into, introducing her, and then turning her into, this Mother Superior character. He gave us this. He introduced Arnie Roth, one of Steve Rogers'
Yeah.
childhood friends.
Yeah.
He developed the relationship that Steve had with his neighbors. He developed the relationship that he had with Bernie Rosenthal. That's where I'm like, okay, he made me really appreciate the man of Steve
Yeah.
Rogers.
He humanized Steve more than any other, I think,
Absolutely.
writer did. Yeah.
Absolutely. And listen, I love the Ed Brubaker run.
Yeah.
100%. And I think we all, there are very few people that have any issue with that run, and most point to it and say that's what all else is compared to. But I don't think Steve was as humanized in those issues
You're
as
right.
he was with DeMatteis. I think those that arc brought out the human element. When he had to deal with his issues with Bucky being brought back, and that was great, and we covered those episodes too, or issues. But that's my dream team. How about you, Bob? Do you have one?
I don't, Rick. I got to tell you, I grew up really more attuned to the work of Sal Buscema,
Yeah.
art-wise. I sort of, I like that. But no, I don't really have a dream team, because I think, maybe we'll talk about this later. Maybe we'll talk about some of the sort of seminal story arcs or one issues that mean the most to us, but they're all over the map. And again, it goes back to, for me, the sorts of things that I look for, that I value in Cap stories. things that resonate with me. And so I think if I had to pick a dream team, I'd go far afield. Not from the history, but I want to see something new. And I like the fact that I know a lot of people don't, but I like the fact that Marvel has tried to pull in writers from outside of the comic community. Folks that are novelists or have written short stories, screenwriters, and brought them in and given them a shot at writing Cap and other titles. I think that's phenomenal. I like that new blood, and that's what I wouldn't go with a dream team. I'd go with sort of an experimental team, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, so potentially the next one could be your dream team.
Maybe. I hope so. I hope we see something. Although I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm seeing from Cantwell, and I wouldn't mind seeing more of him. I don't know.
Nice. All right. Alan Kingsley asks, what Cap stories are in each of your personal Mount Rushmores of Captain America, and why? So I'm interpreting that question, Mount Rushmore, to be top 4.
Okay, that's
right.
Yeah, there's 4 faces on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously no wrong answer here, but gosh, that's a tough question.
No, there are wrong answers, Rick.
the House of Dough. Right? What issue was that? I don't remember. That was a Mark Gruenwald story.
Yeah,
the House of Dough.
Making me hungry, man.
No.
Oh, gosh. Man, what? All right, I can. There can be only 4. Oh, it almost seems like I hate. This is where I feel cheated, right? Because I feel like it has to be Captain America Comics #1, right? I mean, there's just no way around that, and it has to be Avengers 4. But after that, there's a lot of potential for me. So I'm going to have to go with Captain America 176.
Okay.
So that is the lead up to, that's basically him kind of struggling to come to grips with what he is or what he stands for, what it all means. And this is the prelude to him sort of walking away and becoming Nomad. That issue 176 really speaks to me in many ways. And I love that issue. And in a very similar sense, it's issue 332, which is when he lays down his uniform in S.H.I.E.L.D., with his meeting with the commission, right? And that leads into, of course, John Walker taking over as Cap. And again, it's another sort of wrestling with this idea of what does it mean to be Captain America? And in the whole issue, sort of interspersed with a storyline about Walker, is about Rogers wrestling with this. What am I? What am I for? What does it mean for me to be Cap? And do I need to be Cap to be who I am? And so I think those 4 issues for me, although there are other ones, I mean, I'd put 8 faces on Rushmore if this was about Cap, but those are the 4 I'd have to go with. What about you, man?
Oh, I struggle with this question, Alan. So great. Kudos to you for asking the question. I don't know. You threw out some good ones there, Bob. And I would have to say 332 is probably one of my 4, for the reasons you mentioned, of Steve Rogers struggling with his decision. Does he answer to the commission and become a puppet? Or does he understand that, what, as much as Captain America it means to him, that he needs to give it up? And that, and his struggle with that decision, that he reached out to all his friends, right? He reached out to his colleagues. He wasn't perfect. It wasn't black and white. It wasn't because I think Captain America, many people confuse Captain America with this black and white, right? Like it's either this or it's that, and life is gray, right? Well, life is, we don't, it's not a simple answer. And I love the fact that Steve struggled with this.
Yeah.
he's one of us. He's human. And so that's definitely one of those up there. And like I mentioned before, 286 through 289, the 4-part Deathlock story,
Yeah.
that has sentimental reasons for me, because that was my introduction to the Cap that I grew up on. And it was a great story. And we covered that in episode, gosh, 4. Episode 4, we covered that. So it's a great story about a man trying to come in grips with his own humanity, and so that to me, that was when DeMatteis and Zach and Beatty and Sharon were all at their height, right? This was at their height, and of course, Zach and Beatty leave to go off and do the art for Marvel Superhero Secret Wars. So so that's got to be one of those. I don't know. It's such a struggle for the other two. I'd have to go probably with the Winter Soldier story with Brubaker and Epting and Perkins.
But which issue?
Well, the introduction.
Okay.
So
All right.
so that story arc that that we covered in.
Yeah, I know, but I'm that I got to tell you, it seems a bit of a cop out. Did he say story arcs, or did he say issues? I guess he said stories. I guess he said stories.
Let me go back and read the question.
He said stories, so I guess all right. You want to,
Yeah.
Okay.
Cop out, please. Yeah, because that was
all right.
Well, Bob, specifically, that was Captain America Volume 5, issues 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, and 14.
No, the reason I ask is because, a lot of people put their dime on, what was it, issue 6, right? Which was the first appearance of.
No, but that's not what I'm talking about.
What I know.
I'm starting with issue 8.
I know. I know. And that's the issue that I like as well, because that's the one where we got that line, who the hell is Bucky, right?
Yeah. Right.
And that has such emotional and sentimental impact that reverberates over decades of the Captain America mythos. And so, that was on my list of alternates that has to be up there, because that is just such a big step, man, for the creative team to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There's so many good ones. Mount Rushmore. I mean, I know you know what? Here, Bob, I'm copping out. Totally copping out.
I knew it.
I'm copping out. I'm not doing a 4th. Wow. And here's why, Bob. Because I just picked a story from the 80s, right? I picked a story from the 90s. I picked a story from like the 2010s, right?
Yep.
Right? I know I'm going to piss off some listeners who are like, what about the 70s? And there's, I don't know, man. Like I don't want to pick a 4th and alienate some people. Because I'm not, what, I respect a lot of the stories in the 70s. I appreciate them. I don't know if I'm in love with any particular one. I mean, there's so many good ones. I mean, obviously the Steve Englehart run was amazing.
Yeah, that Secret Empire run was pretty darn good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say. All right. Moving on.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
All right, Bob. I got one for you. Jerry Brown asks, I think the next time they revamp and go back to the drawing board and put Cap on ice again, they really need to explore his adjustment. From the 1940s to now is a huge adjustment. How do you think Marvel should handle the next revamp?
Well, that's an easy one, Rick. They shouldn't. I think I know where Jerry's going here, and I think that would be an interesting, it's an interesting thought experiment, right? Because I think the definitive sort of look at this awakening process was the Man Out of Time miniseries, right? Was it 5 issues written by Mark Waid? It was a great series that sort of took the Avengers, what was it, number 4 through I think around number 8 with the Kang story. It sort of looked sort of peeled back the layer of the action and looked at what was going on in the mind of Steve Rogers as he was experiencing the awakening from the ice, his integration into the Avengers, and some of their early adventures. Uh, and it was situated in a particular, point in time and space. And that was what, 20 years, almost 20 years ago, right? It seemed like that, almost that. And so that was great. So what would happen if, like, it's 20 years later, right? Technology's changed, the social environment has changed, and that would be kind of cool. I mean, Steve Rogers trying to figure out TikTok, or Facebook, or any of these sorts of things. That'd be curious, but I don't think we get a lot of mileage out of it. I think the Man Out of Time series is, for me, it's definitive, right? I mean, it is. I can't imagine topping that. So I don't think there needs to be a next revamp. So I guess I'm going to cop out on that one too and say, nope, it's been done and it's been done well. Let's do something different.
Fair enough. I like that.
So here's one for you, Rick, from a member. What a quinky dink. What are the chances of a member being named Steve Rogers? But we do have a member named Steve Rogers, and he wants to know, did Steve grow in height when he received the super soldier serum?
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a good question, Steve Rogers.
Or did he just have better posture?
Sister Superior kept smacking him. All right. So, okay. I would say yes, he did grow in height. Now, I don't have anything to prove this. There's nothing, I think, that is in any of the comics. I don't think there's anything in the encyclopedias, at least that I'm aware of, that says definitively that he grew in height. The only thing that I know of is that he was a 98-pound weakling.
Yeah.
Right. So, they referred to him as 98 pounds. Now, I know in the MCU, right, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've listed him as, like, I think 5'4", and that he grew to 6'2". So in the movies they say that, but in comics I haven't found anything.
Yeah.
So considering that he is 6'2" and he's 240 pounds, I'm going to say he grew in height as well, because for him to go from 98 pounds to 240, right? Like gain 140 pounds and on that same frame seems a little odd to me. So I'm going to say that he was shorter. And I don't know what height he was. I mean, maybe like in the movies, he was 5'4". They tend to do their research, so maybe they came up with something.
Yeah.
And he was 5'4". And I don't know. That's I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that makes sense.
He did grow.
Yeah, I think you've reasoned that out really well, Rick. I mean, I think your skeletal system has to support the muscle. Right. And and the only way to do that is to grow with the muscle. So it happens to all of us. Right. Even when you work out, your skeletal system grows. So I think you nailed that one, buddy.
OK. All right. Good. Hey, we have another caller. Another person who left a message. So this is from James Foley. Now, James also is one of our patrons. So always love hearing from them. And James has a question for you, Bob.
What issue or storyline in a book not called Captain America, Tales of Suspense, or Avengers is most impactful to Captain America? For example, the Nuke storyline from Daredevil 232 to 233, Mighty Thor 390, or ASM 537 with Cap's speech.
All right.
Well, thanks, James. You just took all the answers. That's a great question. That's a great question. So, Bob.
Yeah.
Not named Captain America, Tales of Suspense, or Avengers. What is the most impactful story to Cap? And I think the key word there is impactful.
Yeah. I'm going to, first of all, out of spite, I'm going to ignore the three examples that James has provided us. And this is a tough one for me. You know, I've thought about this, and I think there's like a constellation of four, because he's given us some criteria here, right? We can't go back to Cap. We can't go Tales of Suspense. We can't use Avengers, and he's taken three important storylines off the table. So I'm going to go with a fan favorite, at least this fan. I'm going to go. Four of them, buddy. I want to go with the most controversial one.
Is this your Mount Rushmore of impactful comics not named Captain America?
No, it's all right, here we go. I'm going to say it. I was going to do a what if. I was going to do what if 44.
Ooh.
And that is if Captain
Wait a minute. Is this one of 44 or 29?
This is 44.
Okay.
What if Cap were revived today? It's a great issue, man. And it's got it's got Burnside in it. It's got it's a fabulous book. But I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to go with one that I know is going to irritate and annoy and upset half of our listeners, because that's the way I roll. And I'm going to go with the Secret Empire run by Nick Spencer.
But you. Oh
yeah.
The Secret Empire miniseries.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And let me tell you why. I know a lot of people get upset about this. They don't like it. You know, the Supreme Hydra Cap. It's
Hail Hydra, Bob.
It's a Hail Hydra. It's an uncomfortable storyline. But the thing, and it didn't end, particularly great, right?
Yeah, screw Rick Jones.
Rick, he's had enough airtime. All right, look. But the thing I like about this is, for me, the most curious and interesting thing about Hydra Steve Rogers is, like, if you sort of dissect who that guy is, he is very much similar to our Steve Rogers, right? But there are a few key differences.
He's a fascist.
Well, he's a fascist, right? But he approaches fascism with the exact same persistence and commitment and devotion that Steve Rogers approaches the sort of liberty and democracy and the values that he upholds. And so he does it with, all the same courage, all the same persistence, all the same resilience, all the same, almost, he has all the qualities except for that one chink. And that is his devotion to fascism. And it shows that, like, it makes a difference, right? I mean, the ideals and the principles make a difference. And that sort of dividing line can slip away quite easily. And so, man, I just found that extremely powerful, that except for, the fascism piece, the devotion to Hydra, right? And that's how he was raised, right? I mean, he didn't know any different, right? That he, in this timeline, in the Kobik sort of creation, he was cultivated in this way. And so he thought he was the hero in the story. And that's how easy it is to become lulled into thinking I'm the hero in my own story. And that's the thing, we've talked about this before with villains, right? A lot of the villains that we approach in Cap, they think they're the hero in the story, and they act as if they are the hero in the story. And so I think I encourage everyone to go back and read that series carefully again, because it is haunting and it's chilling. Because there isn't as much daylight between our Steve Rogers and the Hydra Steve Rogers as we'd like to believe. There's only a few key differences, but those key differences make all the difference.
Fair enough.
All right. How about you?
First of all, I salute you. That's a bold choice. Very bold choice.
I'm going into witness protection on Wednesday, and so I'm not that concerned.
Oh boy, I got to tell you. So for our moderators, Heath, Daniel, of course, Bob, that whenever we have something that, because I do daily flashbacks, right, on the Facebook group, and that's my thing. I do that. Sometimes twice a day, 6 a.m., 6 p.m., in case you're curious. And on that is, whenever there's a few things that always gets some sort of vitriol, right? There's the Rob Liefeld issues.
Yep.
And then there's the Hydra Cap issues.
Yeah.
And the haters come out of the woodwork, So wow, that's bold, Bob.
Yeah. Go bold or go home.
Right? Apparently.
What do you got? What's your what's your most impactful?
First of all, I'm James. I love you to death, but you just stole 3 amazing examples. You're like, oh, yeah, the example of the Daredevil issues and the Thor 390 and Amazing Spider-Man 537. So now we can't use those. Come on, James. Those are great. I mean, no, this is James Foley asked this question, right?
Yeah.
So
no, I said he's a thief.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, I mean that Daredevil story, by the way, my second favorite character of all time. So, to see the two of them together, and especially in such an impactful story like that Nuke story, that was amazing. And listen, to Cap fans out there, if you've not read 232, 233 of Daredevil, go do it, because it's great. And of course, Mighty Thor 390, when he first time he's worthy and he picks up Mjolnir, that's quite an impactful story.
Yeah.
So James, you killed me, man. You stole those examples. So I'm going to have to go with Civil War.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Civil War miniseries 1 through 7, that came out, I don't know, 2004, 2005, something like that. Maybe 2006. I don't know.
Yeah. A little bit later. Yeah.
They, as far as impact, that was quite the impactful story to the mythos of Captain America and Steve Rogers. Yeah. Much to, listen, the people who know and love Steve Rogers were not surprised by the fact that he took the opposite view of Iron Man in this miniseries. But for those who aren't familiar with Captain America, they were very shocked to see that he said, no, I disagree with the U.S. government requiring that people with powers need to register. And I believe in the civil liberties and protecting, and he fought and nearly died for that. And then that story continued into Captain America 25 by Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting, where he did die on the court steps on his way being arrested and on trial for his actions in the Civil War. So I'm going to have to go with that one as being the most impactful.
Yep, absolutely. I got that 100%. I would have that would have been on my short list as well. I think you can't ignore that one. It's a seminal run. All right, okay. I think we've only got a few left, Rick. Right?
Yep.
Here's a fun one from Ralph. I want to ask you this one. All right.
Yeah.
And I don't own a single Slurpee cup from the 70s, Rick. I don't own a single one. I wish I did. I wish I had the whole set, because I think that, in retrospect, what an amazing collection that would be. But he wants to know, who deserves a Slurpee cup that didn't get one in the 70s?
Ooh, okay. So I have 4 plastic and 1 glass 7-Eleven cups from back in those days in the 70s. None of them are original. None of them were mine from when I was a kid. But I did pick them up over the last few years, like on eBay, and you can keep your eyes out and get a sharp deal. So they had this in 1975. They did the character cups. And first of all, they did DC as well. They had their DC cups, and then they had their Marvel line, right? So, but in 1975, they did these Marvel cups that were basically, a character, on a white background, as a kind of like a, just a, a hero running, right? And they did a ton of them in 1975. And then in 1977, they came back to Marvel and they basically just took panels from, interior pages or even covers and slapped them on cups, in some cases glasses, in 1977. So I do have some four original cups and a glass from there, and they're sitting over here on my little bookcase. So in 1975, here's okay, to answer Ralph's question. Great question. Who deserves a Slurpee cup today that didn't get one in the 70s? Now, I'm going to stick, because this is the Captain America Comic Book Fans podcast, I'm going to stick with the Captain America theme here. And I'm going to say Red Skull. Okay. So in 1975, they had a ton of Marvel heroes, but only 2 villains. And Bob, when I tell you who these 2 villains are, you're going to be like, why didn't they have a Red Skull?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Villain number 1. Dr. Doom.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yep.
I mean, he's one of the classic
Yeah.
Marvel, right?
Yeah.
Right. Villain number 2. Tundra. That's it, Bob. Those are the 2 villains.
No.
Yeah. Tundra.
Somebody failed in marketing.
I mean, listen, yeah. I'm all for women's rights.
Yeah.
I'm all for,
not Madam Hydra?
No.
I would never stop drinking out of that cup.
I know. Oh, wow.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I'm sorry. You did Tundra, but you didn't do Red Skull.
Yeah.
Come
somebody
on.
dropped the ball there.
Now, they did in 1977 fix the mistake, and they did have a Red Skull, but it wasn't Red Skull by himself. It was a panel from Captain America, and it's Red Skull holding, I think it was Sharon Carter, and Cap's, they're on a boat, right? And Cap's leaping over the edge, and he's about to throw his shield at the Red Skull. So they have that in 1977, but I don't count that. I mean, like it's not like the 1975 Doctor Doom on his own white cup with with him just by himself. So Ralph, sticking with the Captain America Comic Book Fans podcast theme, I'm going to go with Red Skull.
All right. That's a good one. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That was an oversight that definitely needs to be corrected. All right, Rick. Well, as long as we're talking Ralph Warner questions, he's got another one that.
Oh boy, that Ralph.
He's always thinking. But here's a good one for you. He wants to know which hero and villain deserves the Mego figure treatment that they didn't get in the 70s.
Okay. So one thing I'm learning about Ralph is that Ralph is old. I'm sorry. He keeps asking about, the 70s,
yes.
Right?
Right.
I mean, come on, Ralph.
Which Bay City roller do you think was the best?
Well, all right. We're not going to. Some of the other questions he asked that we didn't mention was like, any truth to the rumor that Bob is long lost teen heartthrob Bobby Sherman? Will Rick ever get back to touring as Moby again? I mean, all right, Ralph. You've let loose your H. You've kind of given that away. That's all right.
In fairness, he did point out later that the meds finally kicked in. So
yeah, that's true. All right. So Mego figures. Not 80% of our listeners are like, oh, I remember the Mego figures. They were fun. They were awesome. 20% of our listeners are like, what's that? All right. So Mego figures were 8 to 10 inch action figures that were kind of like GI Joe figures, or where they were action figures that had cloth on them and accessories
Yeah.
on them, right? So, Bob, it's funny. I saw this question and I was like, you know what? I need to go back and take a look at that.
Yeah.
And when I went back and I looked at the Mego figures that came out in the early and mid 70s, there was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 series. And I forgot many of them that I actually had.
Huh.
Like I remember there were 2 that I remember. I remember I had a Joker and I remember I had Thing. Like those were, for whatever reason, those are the ones I remember. And I also remember Joker's hand was broken and I could pop it in and out, and Thing's arm was broken and was just kind of hanging by its side.
Huh.
So maybe that's why I remember them, because they were broken. I don't know. But then when I went and I looked, I was like, oh, wow, I had a Batman. I had a Robin. I had a Spider-Man. I had a Green Arrow. And you know why I remember these things? Because I remember the little booties that you could slip on and off Robin's feet.
Huh.
That's the only reason I remember I had a Robin, because
Yeah.
why else do I remember having booties?
Right.
And then I remember having a Green Arrow because I remember the bow snapped. Like the little band on it was part of the plastic and it snapped in the middle. So it's weird. Like I all of a sudden, like I'm back being, 8 years old, 6 years old again.
Right. Right.
But
I don't remember having any of those.
Oh,
but I'm going to go back and you piqued my curiosity. I'm going to go back and look at some old photos and like from Christmas. Maybe I'll see one on the floor or something. I'm curious, but I don't recall ever having them.
So, all right. To answer your question, Ralph, which hero and villain deserves the Mego figure treatment that didn't get it in the 70s? Now, Bob, for those who don't know, all right, I'm just going to go with Marvel, right? Because they had a ton of DC figures, but I'm just going to go with Marvel. So for Marvel, the first Marvel figure they had that was released was Captain America, and rightfully so.
That makes sense.
They had a Spider-Man. They had a Hulk. Later on, they had an Iron Man, and they had a Thor. They had the Fantastic Four, all 4 characters. Okay. And then they had some villains, such as Green Goblin, Lizard. I know I'm forgetting some. But you know who they had, Bob, that was like, what? Huh?
Don't tell me Tundra. Oh,
Conan.
All right.
Yeah,
were they pushing Conan at that time?
Yo, yeah. Marvel in the 70s?
Yeah. I was never a big Conan guy.
So I'm going to have to go with for villain. That's an easy answer. I'm going to go with Red Skull, right? Like that's a cop out, I'm sure, because I just said Red Skull for the Serpy Club. But I think there should have been a Red Skull villain for Captain America, because they had a Falcon too. They had a Falcon.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
For hero, I'm going to go with my number 2. Daredevil.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You know who my number 2 is, Rick?
Nick Fury.
It is. I wonder, did they have a Nick Fury? I don't know.
They did not have. I don't think they had a Nick Fury Mego doll, but they did have a Nick Fury Slurpee cup.
Did they?
Yes.
Well, that's gonna be something maybe I'll shoot for.
You totally should, dude. I mean, just go on eBay. Be patient. You probably can get one for like less than $10.
Yeah. Huh. I'll have to look for that. That's fun. All right. More things to spend money on.
All right, Bob. We have another call in here, and it's my daughter. I'm scared to listen to this, Bob, because I have not listened to this one yet. This is gonna be now. My daughter, for those who don't know, she'll be 15 in 2 weeks. I told her that I was doing this podcast. So she thinks it's cool that her dad does a podcast, right? So I told her I was doing this podcast. I told her we were doing a Q&A, and people were calling in, leaving messages, and I said, hey, if you want to leave a message, leave a message. And she did. I have no idea what it is. I'm a little scared, Bob.
All right.
Hi, Dad. It's Selena. I was just wondering why there's a picture of Captain America on the fridge where my school picture used to be.
Well, that's obvious. Don't ask a question if you know the answer. Come on.
She's awesome. She's
That's
got a great
awesome.
sense of humor. I don't know where she gets it from.
That's great. My son's 11, Rick. I told him we're doing a podcast, and he's like, what do you go back to the 80s to do that? He's got no zero support. He's 11, no, he's not buying it. So,
that's funny.
Hey, there's another question here, Rick.
Yes. Who's it from?
It's from Michael Keene. Oh, no, it's not Michael Keene. I'm sorry. This was from Ralph. Was this Ralph?
Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. Just ask the question.
All right, here's the question. If you were to give Cap a new recurring sidekick for a couple of years, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. A recurring sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Who asked this question?
I think it was Ralph. I don't know. It's on my list of potential questions, and it got me thinking. So I was like, who would I ask? So I thought it was a pretty good question.
If we could have a recurring sidekick.
I haven't seen one in quite some time, so.
I know, right? That's tough. I don't know. Because obviously you go back and you look at his previous sidekicks, right? And you have Falcon, you have Bucky / Winter Soldier, you have Sharon Carter, you have D-Man,
Rick,
you have Diamondback. What?
I mean, Rick Jones.
Oh yeah, Rick Jones.
The other Rick.
You have Jack Barnes, right? Then, regrettably, you have the ones from the 90s. What was Spirit of Freedom? I don't know.
Oh yeah, right.
What was her name?
The American Dream. Or,
American Dream was his daughter, I think. Right? There's
whatever her name was.
Right. Then you have Jack Flag.
Yeah.
He's dead. Right.
Yeah.
So
he checked out in a helicopter. Yeah.
Right. So I guess it would be somebody new. But there's the Ricky Barnes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Then he had his son from
Z, from
the Z dimension. Hollow dimension. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I don't know who the new one would be.
I got one for you, Rick.
Oh, well, let's hear it.
This one's been brewing in me for a while, right? And I know we reviewed it, right? I can't remember what episode it was, but we reviewed the Falcon and the Winter Soldier miniseries.
Oh, I love where you're going here.
Yeah, I would love to see Cap take the Natural under his wing, get him straightened out, and get him moving in the right direction, man. Give him some schooling from the master and exemplify what it means to be a hero and get that kid on the right track. For those of you that don't know, the Natural was affiliated with Hydra. He was kind of torn between Zola and I can't remember.
Not Zola,
Zemo, and I can't remember the agent's name that was vying for leadership of Hydra, but his parents were super Cap fans, had a house full of memorabilia, but he was really he had amazing skills, right? Natural skills. That's why they called him the Natural, but he was heading down the wrong path about what it meant to be a hero, and Falcon the Winter Soldier tried to extricate him from that. And it kind of left on an unsure note, but I think that would be an awesome kind of.
Mhm.
It wouldn't have to be a whole volume, but maybe for a couple story arcs, it would be good to see Cap straighten that kid out.
It's interesting. So that was, by the way, if you haven't read the Falcon and Winter Soldier miniseries, which came out last year, go back to episode 27. We cover the whole miniseries in episode 27, so you can listen to that. I I love where you're going with that, but I don't know, Bob, because he killed a lot of people,
He did.
and it wasn't like, I don't know, taking on Wanda and Quicksilver and
Hawkeye.
And saying,
Black
well, you
Widow.
guys are reformed villains, but they weren't murderers.
Yeah.
You know, they were thieves. They did some bad things. This guy's he killed a lot of people, a lot of people. So as Steve Rogers, I mean, look, if this kid served his time, you know, and did his time, then I would say, sure, now that you're out and you've done that, then we're going to give you a second chance as to being a hero and make up for the bad you did. I don't know if right off the bat that I could accept him as because he's killed so many people.
Yes, but maybe that's the sort of baggage that a good writer, right, would be able to work with.
That's a good point.
And to add some of that tension, that sort of ethical and moral dilemma for Cap to wrestle with as he tries to, take this kid out of a bad situation and make him into something good. So I don't know. Might be fun. I changed my answer. Just without giving it much thought, I'm going to go with D-Man. I'm going to say Dennis Dumfries. He was a joke back in the 90s. And Mark Gruenwald he picked him up from, I think it was Marvel 2-in-1 or Thing or something like that, and he was a wrestler, and he moved him on to be this sidekick, and we've covered some stories during the Captain days where he was a very insecure partner for Captain America. It was kind of almost like a lost puppy, always looking up to Steve and wanting to have, to get those words of affirmation from him. So I don't know. I think a good writer could take D-Man and say, let's bring him back because he's had a horrible story, right? He became homeless and he was dealing with dementia or whatever it was. And try to bring him back. I don't know. Yeah.
It might be interesting to bring him back and
That would be interesting.
And see what we can do. I mean, God knows we can't bring back Jack Monroe, right? Because Brubaker had Winter Soldier kill him.
Yeah.
So this is the next best thing.
Yeah. No, I think that would be really interesting, right? I always felt that he was sort of an endearing character. So it would be nice to learn more about him and see him grow a little bit.
All right, Bob. Do we have any other questions? What did we miss?
Let's see. I don't know, man. I think I don't know. I think that wraps it up.
All right. Do we talked about giving a prize. Should we give a prize?
Whew.
I'm thinking Ralph Warner.
Yeah,
deserves a prize.
He probably does.
Right? Because he asked a million questions. Some of them were silly and some of them were fun.
Yeah.
One question he asked, and we didn't answer yet, and is any plans to cover Cap's Golden Age stories? And I would say the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
You know what, Bob? We need to cover Captain America Comics #1.
I think we do. And I've got some ideas brewing, Rick, that I wanted to share with you that I think would be really fun and that sort of tackle some of the Golden Age material. And so we'll talk about that. But I definitely think the answer is yes for that.
All right. So, Ralph, send us your address. Go ahead, PM me and I will send you out a prize. Yeah, so this was a lot of fun, and I think thank you to all the people who wrote in on the Facebook pages, who called in and left voice messages. I had a lot of fun reading these questions and answering these questions, and hopefully you guys had fun listening to Bob and I prattle on about our thoughts, because we're certainly not experts.
I love the way that you use prattle in a sentence.
Yes. I think we need to add this to our occasional podcast subject matter. What do you think, Bob? Should we do another Q&A again sometime soon?
I definitely
Not soon,
think,
but sometime.
Yeah, sometime. I think definitely. We gotta, it all depends on the listeners, man. It all depends on the questions, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So we need your help to make these sort of fun and interesting. So dig deep.
Absolutely. And so next episode, we're going to get back into the current pull list of what we got on the shelves. We're going to get into United States of Captain America #2. So we'll be covering that in our next podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed our coverage of #1 and come back for #2. So we'll be doing that next episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So I'm going to be standing outside of the comic store waiting for delivery that Wednesday.
Fantastic. Well, as always, Bob, it's been fun answering Q&A questions about Captain America with you.
Yeah, it has. I learned a lot about you tonight, Rick, and I know what's on your fridge.
Yes, I have to go apologize to my daughter now. All right. He's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis, and you've been listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.